become more prosper economically in Central America with this free trade agreement. The talks were, your countries are too violent for our investors. How are you going to protect our investors in your countries? And that's when Rudy Giuliani, the Manhattan Institute, and other firms came in and created a tactic in Central America to reduce gang violence, because now it wasn't something that was impacting those poor rural communities where the gangs were. Now it was impacting the economic investment of foreigners. It was impacting the way that people felt that they could get richer, or we're talking about the people that got rich out of CAFTA, right? They were talking about how can we portray ourselves in this country that we're doing something about crime, so the investors can feel protected. And that's where the super mano dura came in, which was a tactic that was used, to challenge the gang structures in El Salvador. What that was actually all racial profile. And you go back and you see what they did with Creoles in Nicaragua. Well, it was something similar to that effect when they went in and they labeled people. They identify you by your tattoo, and any tattoo, most of the cops over there, they didn't understand gang tattoos. So it was any tattoo that you had, you were being labeled a gang member, and you were getting arrested. So what this created was where you had different gangs across the country, in Nicaragua, Guatemala, and Honduras as well. You had gangs functioning independently from each other. Some of them didn't even understand the gang culture, but because there were a bunch of kids that were troubled and they didn't have where to go, they assimilated that identity because people feared it. And when people fear you, you had power. So many of the kids that were huelepegas, you know what a huelepega is? The glue sniffers in El Salvador, which was one of the primary drugs for abandoned youth or runaways to keep themselves warm at night and whatnot. When the wave of Salvadorans were being deported to, and Central Americans were being deported, it became the recruitment used. And it was organically. It wasn't something that the gang, sat behind closed doors and strategized how are we going to globalize our barrio, right? It didn't happen that way. They were pushed the gangs were pushed into a corner where it just happened. It just happened. The glue sniffers, which were the kids in the streets, I saw them when I got deported in '94. These kids were in the parks. Nobody gave a damn about them. They were being kicked around by people. They were dying in the streets, and nobody gave a damn about them. These kids became the primary help for many of the deportees that were coming from the United States. Why? Because many of the ones that were being deported did not have any shelter. Many of them had just run their sources out from their families. Their families didn't want to give them nothing anymore. They didn't want to provide for them anymore. And they told them, you're on your own. So many of these individuals came to those countries, deported without a dime in their pockets. So what happens? They're homeless. They became homeless. And who took care of them was the glue sniffers. The kids that were also homeless, they gave them shelter. It wasn't a nice luxury apartment, right? It was under a bridge somewhere, but at least they had shelter. And once those individuals started getting settled in, and once they started seeing that, all these kids were also attracted to the gang culture, all they had to do was put a tattoo on these youngsters. Because the gang has been sensationalized in El Salvador already, that people feared every one of them. Weeks before I returned to El Salvador deported, there had been a big article that had a big picture in the front. It had a plane and a cage hanging from it. And it says, ahí vienen los 600. Here come the 600 worst criminals from the United States. And on it, it was people with mohawks, hoods, machetes, machine guns, MS-18 written on their bodies. So people saw those images, and all of a sudden they see me walking down the street with tattoos on my arms and fingers, you know, and walking with that stroll, that goatee, you know, just like, he's one of the 600. And automatically, you know, people just assumed that. And I probably was, you know. But the issue was that it also attracted many of the young kids. It attracted many young kids to the point that the second day I was in El Salvador with my tia who gave me a place to stay, I had these guys that came over to her little tienda, little store, window store that she had, and they told her that they were going to kill me. The second day I was there, I had no idea who they were. But my tia said, why would they want to kill you? They don't even know you're here. So all that night, in my mind, you know, I said, I'm a gangbang in El Salvador tomorrow. Against who? I don't know. But tomorrow, I'm a gangbang, and toda la noche, I found an old rusted machete, sharpened it, and I was ready to gangbang. That wasn't what was in my head when I got deported. When I got deported, I was saying, you know what, I'm tired of this shit. I'm tired of going to prison because I ended up going to prison 3 times. On top of the times that I had been locked up in juvenile hall and the county, I was tired. I had a son that I had left behind as well, who I had never seen because he was born during my last stay in prison. And I'm thinking, I'm going to go to El Salvador, I'm going to go to those places that people always talk about. Apulo, La Costa del Sol, Puerto La Libertad, all those places that my friends used to talk to me about that I didn't know. Right? So I was going down there in my mind as a tourist. Right? Give me a month, I'm going to go to all those places. And I did. But in my mind, you know, that's what I was going to go do. But when I got down there, the realization that there was nobody waiting for me in the airport, and then the second day, you know, I was being threatened that I was going to die, and the fact that I seen my gang writing with the gang that I belonged to on the walls, and then the rival gang that I was part of also on the walls, you know, just changed the whole mindset that I had. Now I wasn't thinking about being a tourist. Now I was on guard. I was like, look at everybody now and think they're the enemy. Right? So that was what happened, you know. The following day, I approached these guys out of nowhere, you know. I just came out with a machete, you know, with my muscle shirt, and I had tattoos on my chest also. And I wasn't overweight, and so I had just come out of prison, so I had done my workout in there, right? You know, I jumped out. Now imagine me jumping out with a machete in the hand, right? No matter who you are, no matter how badass you are, you know, I got the element of surprise. This guy almost shitted on himself, right? And I'm hearing, where you from, Messi? Right? And this guy just looks at me, and I suddenly realized that I had said it in English. Right? I was still thinking, you know, gang banging is not for El Salvador. Gang banging is from LA, where I'm from, you know, because I never thought that I was from El Salvador. I always thought I'm from LA. Right? This guy had so happened that he was claiming the gang that I belonged to. And I said, so what the fuck do you want to kill me for, man? We're from the same barrio. He was like, oh, because somebody had told us that you had 18th Street on your back too. I said, look at me, man. Right? So I had tattoos. I got them removed through our program. Right? So that's why you don't see any anymore. But that same day, after they left, my tia was like all nervous and shaky. She didn't know what. I mean, I wasn't. My high just came down, you know, but my adrenaline was sky high, you know. I was feeling that rush. And that's the rush that these kids seek. The rush that they feel they're alive, you know. And there's nothing more, you know, pleasurable than to be at the edge of dying and you don't.